Okay, perfect. So for today, we're just going to be going through and we're going to be talking a little bit about Shield Ignite, a little bit of an overview of sort of what the program is about, and then how to get in contact with your mentors and everything. Talk about the Intercession Gala, get everything all set up, and then just basically play some games with your mentors, get to know them. So for those of you who don't know, so Shield Ignite is basically a student-led club on the U of C campus that we sort of have the goal of trying to ignite a passion for programming around campus. And we do this through offering a bunch of courses, and we have a couple of other initiatives that are coming up, like hackathons, as well as a blog that we have running. And basically our goal is just to get people interested in programming. And with that, we have a little video just from our club president. Let me see if I can get the audio working. Yeah. How about now? Okay. All right, I'm not going to waste too much time messing around with that. We can maybe go back on the slides afterwards and take a look if you're interested at the video. I just don't want to waste time trying to debug that. I have a really complicated audio setup, so basically we'll cover most of the information, but essentially it just covers a lot of stuff that I just talked about. Okay. So a little bit about what we're trying to do with Scorch. So essentially by the end of the course, we want you to be able to actually create a website. So be able to create it from like a template or from scratch. Basically everything that you need to actually just sort of like go out, build a website. You know, I want to do some weird project. I'm just going to go out and do it essentially. And then also just talk about sort of what's happening in the browser so that you know when you're visiting other people's websites, when you go to other websites, when something goes wrong on a website, all that sort of stuff, you actually know sort of what the steps are that the browser is taking, how it's actually loading the page and how that all works. A little bit about industry practices. So instead of just sort of giving you like random pieces of test code, we're also going to be showing you how to use like actual industry standard practices that happen, as well as industry standard resources that we use to sort of like help design, help build, help do all that sort of stuff. And then also just an idea of like where you can use web development in other fields, because it's not just web development that uses web development skills. So with that said, our approach is a little bit different. So one of the main things that we really want to focus on is getting you guys experience building actual like applications and stuff that you actually have something cool to look at. So talking about building applications that are real world sort of centric. So looking at the real contract and sort of like what that sort of stuff would look like and like how you'd actually build out a site that actually matches that specification. Getting you experience building multiple websites, covering a whole ton of topics. So how you design and build websites that are different for different people. Cover some theory about how things work. So how stuff works in the browser, how stuff works actually in the website itself, how the actual programming stuff all works. And then covering some real world tools and just basically getting everything that you need to get set up for learning for now. And then also giving you a foundation to go out and like build things that are more complicated in the future. So why bother learning web development in the first place? So like I said before, it's not only web development skills that are used in web development. It's used for a whole bunch of things. So like websites, car dashboards. If you make games, most of the UI is typically written in JavaScript and it uses XML, which is basically the same concept as HTML. Web-based games, mobile apps, all that sort of stuff. Hardware integrations. The printers thing actually is funny. When I was 16, I used to work on doing some building for receipt paper printers that work like when you go to like Little Caesars, something like that, and you get a receipt at the end. That's all written using the same sort of stuff that you use for web development as well. So lots of places you can use this information down the road. And then practicality and creativity wise, there's a ton of jobs, tons and tons and tons of jobs. And if there aren't jobs, you can also make jobs for yourself by going out and just getting contracts, going out and talking to companies and getting them to hire you to build. From there as well, we also have like the fact that it's just easy and cheap to distribute. There is no easier way to get information out to people than a website. Everybody has a browser. They either have it on their phone or they have it on their computer. So yeah, and then there's tons of other options for just doing design styling. You basically will never, if you never want to, you can never build the same website twice. You can just always have new things that you can learn and build from there. So this is the sort of stuff that we're going to be covering. So although this probably doesn't mean a whole lot right now. Basically, the first 3 sessions are just going to be talking about how to get like a regular website up and running. The fourth session is going to be talking about how to make that website a lot easier to maintain, how to make a website that's easier for other people to use, people who aren't technical to be able to use. And then the fifth session is going to be talking about like how to actually get that website up in the world and actually be able to be seen by other people, and how sort of your browser actually talks to people, how you talk to other computers and all of that sort of stuff. The sixth session, we're going to be talking about sort of how to set up like an actual application in terms of like a database and a backend and all that sort of stuff. And then session 7, we're going to be teaching you how to break into websites. So that'll be fun. That one, we're going to be teaching you how to sort of take the websites that you've built, look at the way you built them, and then see how people can break in and take the information, and then also how to avoid taking the information or having the information taken from your services as well. And then session 8, we're going to cover some weird stuff that exists on the web that's beyond just regular websites. Most people, when they think of a web browser, they think of just, you know, we have some websites that you can build and do all that stuff. There's a ton of other stuff that you can do. There's things like MIDI interactions. So if you have like a piano or a keyboard, you can like build apps that work directly with that. Like VR, AR, there's a whole bunch of different things you can do with the web beyond just having it just be there for regular websites. So we'll talk about that in the 8th session as well. So one other thing that we changed about our approach is that we'll cover the technical aspects, but we don't really want to be like a glorified tutorial. You can get sort of like the, you know, this is how you put a basic website together from anywhere online. So we want to go a little bit further than that. And so we're going to be talking about like the reasons why that we're doing the things that we're doing, and sort of the ways that you can do it in a different way that might be better for different use cases, as well as like resources for you to go and like look at other people's ideas of how to do things and other ways of doing them. And then practice in multiple contexts, and also the ability to talk to your mentors about this sort of stuff. Super handy to have somebody to talk to, and super handy to ask questions. You'll learn a lot more by asking questions for your mentors than you will doing pretty much anything else. So. And on top of that, we also do multidisciplinary approach to this. So it's great that you can build a website, but what actually makes it a good website? If you can build a website that nobody wants to visit, it's kind of useless. So going to be talking about things like basic design principles, how to write content for a website so people don't just immediately click away. Case studies with real websites. We'll take some real websites, take them apart, and look at like how they do what they do and sort of the practices they follow. And then the security principles, like I was talking about, to kind of make it so that you aren't leaking a bunch of people's personal data when they sign up for your site. So yeah, so basically everything that you need to answer questions like, why is the right-hand side better than the left? The right-hand side actually has a lot more text, but it's much easier to read. It looks less daunting than the left-hand side. Also, by the way, the little R in the corner, there is something broken with Google Slides. That's supposed to be a question mark, so just heads up for that. Things like, how do you turn a site like this, where it's just sort of plain text, into something that looks a little bit nicer, or even something that's even easier to read with a dark theme? And then here's kind of a sneak peek at like what we're going to be building. So by the end of the second session, we'll be building mobile responsive sites like the one that you can see on the right-hand side here, where you have like a nav bar and a whole bunch of stuff there, and everything sort of shrinks and matches to fit whatever size screen you're currently on. By the end of session 3, we'll be able to build things like this, which is a full like coding blog that's powered, and it goes through, it has like nice fancy filtering. It has a whole bunch of nice syntax highlighting that shows up for any of the code snippets that show up. And then also a little bit of a fancy thing here called create a page, which is basically where you can type some stuff into this box. There's a whole bunch of like different styling and formatting you can put into there. And then when you hit the button at the bottom, it'll basically go through and it'll actually create a web page from the web page that you're entering. So as I'm entering in this list right here, you'll see here, I make like a little shopping list at the bottom here. And then I can go through and make them just like a bullet point. And then when I hit that, it'll create a new file in the bottom corner that I can click, and it's using that information to create that page. And then by the last session, we'll be able to do something like this, which is basically a system where we type in the ID of a Pokemon. It goes and fetches it from somebody else's database so that we don't have to host our own information, and it'll pull it and pull the information for us, as well as leaving us a link to Bulbapedia. So lots of fun projects as we're going through this. One thing about the slides as we're going through, the slides aren't meant to be read entirely. They're meant to serve sort of two purposes. One is to help when we're presenting, but it's also to help for you to go back afterwards if you're interested in it. So the slides are designed to sort of like stand alone without having to have me sort of presenting. And so because of that, they're a bit longer, which means I'm not expecting you to like read every single line and like pay attention to literally everything that's on there, because some of it's a bit extra. It's better to listen to me than it is to sort of try and read the whole slides. With that, we also will have different slides that we'll be going over, and they're used for different purposes. So these sort of main slides here, where it's sort of transparent white at the top, will be just sort of the main information. But then we'll also have these green slides here, which are resources. These will have basically links to other stuff that you can look at. This might be something related to the topic we're talking about, or it might be like extra concepts that we don't have time to cover, or like libraries or random places that you can go and like check out stuff. So these ones are basically just there for you to go back if you're interested later on and go and read stuff. On top of that, we have quick questions, which is these orange bars that'll pop up. They're basically like a multiple choice thing that'll pop up in the Zoom chat. for you to go through and answer the questions. Exercises is where we'll do regular coding exercises. If you've been through Ignite before, you're used to this. And then the one thing that's different is that we have the end of session exercises will be purple, and these will be a much longer form thing that you can complete, and they'll be basically your time to sort of test your skills and go through that. And so the end of session exercises will have 3 different levels of difficulty. Each session will be like different. So when you go through and do like session 1 will have an end of session exercise that has 3 levels, and that might be different requirements than the next one. Sometimes they stack. Sometimes you have to complete like level 1 to complete level 2 to complete level 3. Sometimes they'll be separate. Sometimes you only have to do 1. So the information will basically be there when we look later on about the repo that we'll be downloading and getting all the files from. It'll have the information about all of that in each of the session folders. So they're entirely optional, but they are for Ignite points, which I'll discuss in a second here, which means that basically they'll be submitted and they'll be like graded. The marking is essentially just if it actually does what it's supposed to do, basically. So I wouldn't be too worried about like if it looks exactly perfect. Don't worry about that. Basically, if it does what it's supposed to do, you'll get it. So with that, talking about Ignite points, essentially they're essentially a system that we have where you collect a bunch of points, and then at the end of the sessions, we'll have sort of prizes for people who are in the top 3. So there's tons of ways to earn them. The main one is going to be through attendance and through answering questions and exercises. So if you continually attend, you get what's called a streak score, which I'll talk about in the next slide. But then also making sure to answer your quick questions, and also the end of session exercises will give you points as well. The end of session exercises, you'll get more points for the higher level that you try to go to. So keep that in mind when you're taking a look at which one you want to do. So the top 3 students will get a $50 Amazon gift card. So there's an incentive for you to try and actually do them. And so the streak score that I mentioned before, basically you get consistent increases in the amount of points that you get for increased attendance. So if you attend the first session, you get 5 points, then the second session, you'll get 10, et cetera, until you miss a session. So on the next slide, we can see here, you attend session 1, you get 5, session 2, you get 10, 15, 20, 25, you miss session 6, so you go back down to 0, and then you get 5, 10, et cetera. So essentially it's in your best interest to show up for each of the sessions if you want to get the scores. Quick questions, they'll have little they actually won't have this icon. They'll just be the orange banner that we talked about earlier, and they'll be worth 10 to 20 points each depending on how difficult the question is, and they can be answered through the Zoom poll when it actually pops up. They're basically just multiple choice questions. And then the end of session exercises, there's basically 3 levels to them. Level 1 will give you 15 points, level 2 will give you 25, level 3 will give you 35. So essentially it's just a challenge for you to do that matches whatever the topic is for that week. So it's a good chance to sort of test out your skills and get some feedback on the stuff that you're working on. So for everything, that'll be on the website. If we actually click on the website and take a look at it, if you go under the sessions and then go under the Scorch sessions here, there's some information about the program. And then there's also some information about how to get everything working. And then in there will be a link to these slides as well. So there'll be a link to all the slides will show up there in sessions as they pop up. The next thing is the Discord. So the Discord will be where you sort of communicate with your mentor. There'll be dedicated channels for your group, and there'll be a place for you to talk to your mentor as you go. We have the link down here. So if you want to go ahead and join that, that'll be important, especially if you're going to do the end of session exercises. That'll be handy because then you can talk to your mentors after the sessions if you have questions about anything as you're going through. So once you actually join the Discord, there's basically steps here for checking your email for the day of the week and then doing the bot commands to set your account from there. If you have questions about this, you can ask your mentors when we go into the breakout rooms. And then, like I said as well, there'll be an end of session gala at the end of the 8 weeks, which will be a chance to sort of celebrate the end of Ignite. It'll be a chance, if you're interested, you can have like a project that you want to show off. So if you've built any of the end of session exercises would be a great option for this, or anything that you've built yourself using the skills that you've learned. Basically, you get a chance to show it off. There'll be people there who are in the industry. So there'll be there people from Microsoft, AMD, Google, tons of places will be at the gala. And essentially, it'll be a good chance for you to just show stuff off as you go. So let's get set up. So the first thing is that you'll need a Chromium-based browser. If you don't know what that means, just make sure that you have Google Chrome installed. If you have Firefox or you have Safari installed, and that's your primary browser, you'll need to also install Chrome to be able to do this, just because the syntax that we'll be teaching is, most of the stuff won't be specific to Chrome, but we just don't want to have to try and troubleshoot issues that are happening on different browsers, just for this course. So the link to install that is just down here if you're interested. So you can just click that and install it. If you already have Chrome or you already have Edge, you'll see I'm using Microsoft Edge for most of my stuff. That's Chromium based as well, so that's fine. The other thing that you'll need is Python. You'll need Python 3.7 plus, and you'll need the non-Windows Store version. So if you installed Python using the Windows Store, you will have to go through and download it from not the Windows Store. So there's a link right here. If you just click it, it'll take you to the most recent version. So Python 3.11, you can download it for Windows, Linux, Mac, whatever you want. Download it and install it. You will need, again, the non-Windows Store version. If you installed the Windows Store version, when you try to install any packages, it will fail. So it won't fail. It'll show you that they installed and it won't work properly. So just install it directly from here and you'll be good to go. And there's also a guide down here to install it. I think most people are probably from the previous sessions. So if you already have Python installed, you're probably good to go anyways. Next thing we'll need is EasyCV. So if you never installed a package from Python, so on Windows, what you can do is you can hit the Windows key or you can hit the start bar, which will probably be down in the bottom left-hand corner for most people. So just down here. Essentially, once you do that, just type in CMD and hit enter. And a window like this will pop up. And then from there, you just type in Python, make sure that you have your right version. So in my case, 3.10. And then to install, all you want to do is do pip, which is the package manager for Python, install, and then EasyCV. And what this is doing is going to set up one of the packages that we're going to use later on in the course. So when you do that, it'll go run through and it'll go through and download it. I already have it downloaded, so that's why it says requirement satisfied. You'll know that you did it correctly if you can type in EasyCV into the terminal, hit enter, and you'll get something that pops up like this, where it says usage and it has this information down here. So give you guys a chance to go through and do that. Just let me know. Maybe we'll give it. Actually, what I'll do is I'll let you guys do that. And then I will keep talking about VS Code and everything else from here. And if you do run into any problems, then when we get into the breakout rooms, you can ask your mentors if you're having any issues with anything. So yeah, once you have VS Code set up and installed for macOS or Linux, you will have to do pip3, not just pip, because macOS and Linux both typically come with Python installed. So pip3 is what you'll have to do to be able to get that working. Next thing is VS Code. So for VS Code, we're going to be using it for editing. If you were in any of the other sessions, we used VS Code before. I think for the advanced sessions, we used VS Code. So you'll probably already have it installed. If not, you just have to go through and install it. So if you come to code.visualstudio.com, there'll basically be different options depending on your operating system. Go ahead and download that and install it. It's pretty simple. You just sort of follow through and just hit the boxes until it installs. So once it's installed, the only extra thing that you will have to do, I'll just pop open. I'm going to quickly open a new folder and I'll open VS Code in this folder. The only extra thing that you'll want to do is when you first install VS Code, something like this will pop up. There'll be like a welcome screen with like a walkthrough and some information. The only extra thing that you want to do is on the left-hand side here, there are extensions. And you can come in here, and what you can do is you just type in Python, and there'll be one that has a little plus here that's from Microsoft. So you can install that, or alternatively, if you come to the Python extension pack, which is by Don Germain, this has just some extra stuff in it that's super handy as well. So this comes with the regular Python stuff. It also comes with Jinja, which is something that we're going to be using later on. And it comes with some extra stuff like giving you correct Python indentation and doing a bunch of stuff for you. So I would recommend using this instead because it's a little bit easier to write Python code using it. You'll know that you installed it correctly because if you open up a new file here and you say hello.py, and then I start typing something like import math, you'll see here I'm getting the highlighting that shows up. You'll know that you installed it correctly if you have that. You'll also see down here, it'll tell you which version of Python you're running. Okay. Also later on, we will be installing some other extensions as we go, as we need them, we'll install them. So yeah, just keep that in mind as we're going. Yeah, so once you have it installed, yeah, you can just set up the extension thing the same way on Windows. You can just click the Windows key and just type in Visual Studio, and then it'll pop up with Visual Studio Code. You can open it and just install the extension like I just showed you, and you're good to go. That just covers the same thing. We will later on be talking about Emmet. I'll talk about this in the first session, but essentially this is something that we set up. We're not going to make you like memorize code down the road. So we'll be using little snippet systems to be able to do inserting code for us for web development. So the next thing that we'll need is GitHub. Basically, this is just like a thing for you to store your code and sort of be able to back up and change versions of your code, essentially. If you're interested in how Git actually works, there is a video right here that we did a while ago talking about how it works. But long and short of it is that you'll just need the account later on for being able to put websites up. We're going to be using them to host our websites. So you'll need an account on GitHub in order to be able to host your website. So in order to do that, you'll have to head here. I'll actually grab this link and I'll check it in the chat. It's a basic sign up form. You need an email, password, your name, and all this sort of stuff. When you're picking a name, don't pick anything that you don't want people to see. When you go through and you have a when you set up a site, it will use your username in the URL. So if you don't want people to see the username, don't make it something that you don't want people to see in the URL. That's very important as you're going through. Okay, once you have actually gone through and completed that, it'll ask you to complete the I'm Not a Robot quiz, which will just be like some regular old math questions or something like that. And then from there, you just have to go through and get the code from your email to finish your sign up. If you run into any problems with this, just talk to your mentors as well when you're in your breakout rooms, and you can get it sorted out from there. When you're done, you'll have something that should be github.com/username. Again, very important that you don't make your username something you don't want people to see. So github.com/descent098, for example, is mine. And it'll look something vaguely like this. You'll have less stuff showing up, but it'll look something similar to this. So you'll know that you did it right if that shows up. By default, it'll have these what are called identicons. That's just like a generated image. So you can replace that down the road if you're really interested. Sorry, there's an alarm going off. I'm just quickly dealing with that. So once you have that all set up, we can go through and download the code for our sessions. So the link is here. I'll put it in the chat as well. When we click on the link, it'll take you to this page. And so like I was saying before, GitHub is basically a place that lets you manage your code. And so because you can just manage your code from here, what you can do is you're just going to come into where it says code and then just hit download zip. And this will download a file that contains all the code that's inside here. So all of these folders and everything that's all in here. So let's wait for that to download. And once it does download, usually for most operating systems, you should be able to just click it and it'll open. On Windows, you might have to right click and then hit extract if you don't have anything installed to manage doing zip files. And on Mac, it should be default as well that you should be able to just open it kind of like a folder. And then once you do, there'll be a folder inside. It looks like this, Scorch 2023 main. I'll just drag that out onto my desktop. And when I pop it open, we have all of the files and folders, everything in here. So yeah, basically just extract the files and then check today's files. So go to day 0 and then try to open up the file folder that's there. So if I go ahead and come back to here, inside day 0, you should be able to go to exercises. And then there should be this thing that says test.html. You should be able to open that in a browser. So it should be something like Chrome or anything like that. If you're not able to open it by just double clicking, what you can do is you can click and you can drag it into the browser and it'll pop it open in the browser like that. And you should basically see something that says welcome to the course. So yeah, that's what you should see when you're doing that. The other thing that you can test as well is you can check if your VS Code is working by just, if you're on Windows, you should be able to right click and then do open with code right here. If that doesn't appear for you, then what you can also do is just open up VS Code and then open up that file from there. So you see I already have VS Code open, so I can open it just by clicking on the little start menu and then typing in like Visual Studio and then doing it that way, or I can just grab this file and I can drag it into here and then I should be able to see this content as well. Okay. The only other thing is that we will be using markdown files as well a lot. So these are just .md. By default, VS Code will let you open them. So you just go in here, do the same thing where I just drag the file into there. And then what I can do is press Control-Shift-V or Command-Shift-V on a Mac, and that will open up a preview, and it'll look something like this. So whenever you see the regular file, the file looks something like this. It's not very easy to read. What you can do is press Control-Shift-V, and it'll go ahead and it'll open up the preview like this, and you can see what it's supposed to look like. Okay, so we went through quite a few steps all at once. So what we're going to do now is we're going to switch over to breakout rooms with your mentor. And if you do have any questions or you're having problems with anything working, then you can go through and talk to them and chat with them about any of the problems that are going on. And we'll just give you about like 5-10 minutes to give that a go. What we're going to do now is we're just going to do some icebreaker activities. So I just pulled you guys back in for that and just make sure that everything's muted. Okay. So we'll send you back to your breakout rooms with your mentors in a second. What we're just going to do is we have a couple options for you guys to do. So we have some questions that you might have for mentors. You can ask them. If you're still having problems with anything being installed or getting set up, you can ask them that as well. And give you guys a chance to play some games as well. So the first thing that we're going to do is just an icebreaker activity. So what's your name? What's your favorite smell? And something about programming that interests you will be the first icebreaker. And then there's some suggestions here for stuff that you guys can do, like 2 truths and a lie, any trivia games, Among Us, Scribble, any of those sorts of things that you guys can play. And you can feel free after that. We'll just sort of do a quick wrap up and just keep in mind that the first session for teaching will be on Wednesday, and it'll be from 6 to 7:30. And then it'll be every Wednesday after that until April 5th. And remember to join the Discord as well. So we'll send you guys back into your breakout rooms.